Let's go! It's 60 years of Lamborghini, and to celebrate, we've come up here in the hills above Modena to drive the two Lamborghini model lines that have brought the company to the position that it is in today, a position of rude health. We've got the Huracan Tecnica, the last of the pure V10 naturally aspirated non-hybridized engine, and we got the successor to the Urus, both the Urus S and the Urus Performante. Now in this video, we're not going to tell you which is better, the Urus S or the Performante, because if you can afford either of them, well, both are absolutely incredible. But what we will be doing is going full send up in the hills, making the V10 shriek and the V8 thunder. We start off in the Urus, the best-selling Lamborghini model line ever. Last year, Lamborghini India put out a press release announcing 200 Urus sales. This year, they'll probably do 220, 230, maybe even 250 because demand has been through the roof. In fact, up until right now, as we speak, the Urus S wasn't available also to order in India. Lamborghini India had run out of entire allocation, but now they've managed to get a few extra units for India. So if you want an Urus S, you better go out and book one right now while there are still allocations. As for the Performante, this is available. Now this is around 50 lakh rupees more than the Urus S, and it is the more track focused Urus. So unlike the Urus S that rides on air suspension, here you only get steel springs, and the springs are lowered by 200 millimeters. So it sits a little bit more hunkered down. This is the SUV that you take to a racetrack. As crazy as that sounds, and I don't know how many Urus Performante owners are going to be taking their SUV onto the racetrack, but if you do intend to, this is more than capable, especially since this runs cut slicks. These are Pirelli Super Trofeo R tires, and these tires are in the 22-inch size. You can also option 23-inch wheels, but that doesn't get the cut slicks, the track spec slicks. It's just crazy. A road-going SUV coming with factory-fitted semi-slicks. And the other big talking point of the Urus S, stick it into sport mode and listen to this. This sounds mental. So on the powertrain front, this continues with the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, but power goes up to 657 bhp. The torque, it remains the same at 850 Newton meters. That's the max that this transmission can handle. And you get 0 to 100 in 3.3 seconds. Top speed 306 kilometers per hour. There have also been changes to the mechanicals and to the underpinnings. So the Performante, it gets that little wing downforce has gone up. Weight has come down, but it's come down by 47 kilos. So this is big, this is heavy, this is wide. And to deal with that, it gets rear axle steering. So out here in the tight hills, it's easier to handle. It's more nimble and more compact, especially considering the actual size of the vehicle. I have driven the regular Urus, the one that is not available right now. I've driven it quite extensively, especially in India, and I can tell you that even on Indian roads, the Urus, its ride comfort is something else. This one, it feels much firmer. It is stiff. It feels like a proper track-focused vehicle, which it is. The torsion differential on the rear axle has been reworked, so it sends more power to the rear axle, makes it feel more rear wheel driven. Obviously the torque split using the limited slip differential has also changed, so you get torque vectoring, you get a revised steering, you get wider tracks. All of it leads to that mind-blowing performance in corners, those racetrack lap times, and of course you get absolutely wild styling. So of course this still looks like an Urus, but it has been revised with more shouty elements. There's more carbon fiber all over the exterior. There is that little spoiler on the rear. You get the quad exhaust tips, and these are Akrapovic exhausts. That also leads to that weight saving because it's a full titanium exhaust. If you want a super sport SUV, this is it. The Performante is it. You crack open the windows a bit more and it sounds ace. So I'm actually following an Urus S, and the Urus S looks more planted over these bumpy roads. Obviously that air suspension is working slightly better in keeping that body a little bit more composed. One thing that might not work in favor of an Indian audience is you don't get a sunroof with the Performante. No sunroof! Of course, I'm kidding. Don't bombard the comments. But if you do want the sunroof, there is the Urus S, and that's what we're going to swap into next. So if you want a sunroof on your Urus, you can still get a sunroof on your Urus. As we started filming this story, Sharad Agarwal, the head of Lamborghini in India, he told us that a few allocations of the Urus S have been additionally been made available for India. So up until now, you couldn't buy an Urus S because all the allocation was done for the India allocation. But now they have got a few units. So if you are in the market for an Urus S, 4.18 crore rupees starting price, and then of course you can option the hell out of it. You can get an Urus S. And why should you look at the Urus S over the Performante? Well, not the sunroof, because come on, that can't be your main buying decision. But the big difference is that the Urus S rides on air suspension. So there are two benefits to that. One is the ground clearance. The Performante is 200 millimeters lower to the ground. The Urus S is not only higher, but it can go even higher with the air suspension. So you get the ground clearance plus the associated wading capability, just in case on the off chance that you have taken the Urus S out and it started to rain and the roads have started to get flood. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think anybody's ever going to make that mistake with their 4 crore plus rupee super SUV. But hey, if that's an issue, you're sorted. And the second is the ride comfort. The most important, obviously, this rides in a much calmer fashion compared to the Performante. These ripples, which you could really feel thanks to that firmness in the Performante suspension, this Urus S glides over it all. It soaks it up. It breathes over these bumps. And that makes it a properly comfortable SUV. So the engine, the same 4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine. It makes the same power as the Performante, 657 bhp, the same torque output, 850 Newton meters. So obviously it will have the same 0 to 100 time, the same 306 km per hour top speed. This is fast. Okay, it won't set Nürburgring lap times to the extent that the Performante will do, but I think this is the more sensible option if you're not going to be shattering lap records with your super SUV. It's calmer, it's a bit more composed, yet it is capable of insane speeds, shattering speeds. And then when you are in these narrow streets in the city center, You got to navigate speed breakers. The Urus S does it easily. No stress, no tension. That's the reason why SUVs, performance SUVs, have got such a solid market. You get the power, you get the insane styling, and you get usability. Now, talking about the styling, the Performante gets all those carbon fiber appendages which the Urus S does not. But then again, you save 50 lakh rupees when you buy an Urus S, and you can reinvest that 50 lakh rupees in optional stuff. And to my mind, the Urus S also looks phenomenal. Of course, the Performante is wild, but this looks phenomenal. The only thing that I miss is the Acropovich exhaust on the Performante. But honestly, even this sounds throaty, deep, aggressive, loud, angry. Everything. It pops and crackles. Maybe not with the same exuberance, but it's slightly more livable. Now, I'm not going to tell you that this is better than that, because this is not a comparison test. How can it be? But I'm here to tell you that if you want a little more comfort, Urus S does give you that. It seems like the obvious thing, but I have to stress the fact that you can make out a noticeable difference in the comfort. You don't get a rally mode on the Urus S. You get 5 different modes for the Anima. And you can tweak it to suit your mood and the destination. If you're up in the hills, Sport works really well. Corsa 2 works even better. You get a bit of leeway with the ESP, with the torque vectoring, a little bit more rear biased character, not as much as the Performante, but more than enough for a road going SUV. And it all feels more dialed in than the earlier Urus. Nobody really complained about float with the earlier Urus. But then when you drive the Urus S, you realize that, okay, hang on, that did have a bit of float, which is not evident in the Urus S. And talking about comfort, you get more comfortable seats. If you're used to Audis, your left hand, well, because this is a left-hand drive car, so your left hand goes instinctively for that adjuster, and you press the middle button, and you notice that you have massagers. You have the same massage functions as you would in an A8 or the Q8 e-tron or even the Q8. So there is familiarity if you've been living with an Audi and now it's time to upgrade to a Lamborghini. A lot of automotive testers, knowledgeable automotive testers, have this kind of aversion to performance SUVs, and I understand where they're coming from, because we talk about these performance SUVs being like a sports car. But then why do you want something that is like a sports car when you can actually just buy a sports car? But there is the other aspect, and that is in India, back home, our roads are in bad shape. We have great roads, but to get there, you have to go through proper crap roads. And covering that distance in a sports car is difficult. It's not easy. I've done a fair few miles in sports cars and Lamborghinis. I've driven through Kerala, up the hills of Wayanad, into the forest. And once you're in the forest, it's epic. But getting there, going over speed breakers, dealing with traffic in a sports car is tough. It's nobody's idea of fun. Whereas in an Urus, you deal with all of that easily and with a great amount of speed. Since you're sitting so high up, you even get a great view of the road ahead that makes you safer, gives you more confidence. There's nothing like a relaxed Lamborghini. The Urus S is also completely switched on all the time. So even in the Strada mode, which is the regular comfort mode on an Urus, the engine, the transmission, it all feels like as if it is in sport mode in some other Volkswagen Group car. Remember, this engine, transmission, it is shared with a fair few SUVs and cars in the Volkswagen Group. But in the Urus, it at the base setting feels dialed up to 8. And then in sport, it feels really aggressive. In fact, it's a bit too aggressive on the throttle. So if you're just pottering around, it's a bit too jumpy. But then of course the exhaust is more throaty, more shouty, louder, harder, faster, and more involving. No such thing as a soft Lamborghini. And no wonder these Uruses are flying off the shelf. Last year, Lamborghini put out a release saying that they've sold 200 Uruses, and that pace of deliveries, one Urus every week, it shows no sign of slowing down. In fact, if anything, it's just getting faster and faster. As in fact, the SUVs are fueling sales of the sports cars, and that's my cue to jump into a proper sports car, the Technica. I'm not going to compare an SUV to a sports car, but I might. Right, and a final switch over now to the Huracan Tecnica. This gives me an opportunity to compare turbocharging to natural aspiration, to compare a big SUV to a light sports car. And the immediate sensation is of driving something that you'll really, really miss when it is eventually legislated out of production. This is the last of the Huracan line. Of course, there is the Sterato, which is the absolute last of the line. But this is where the naturally aspirated, non-hybridized, unmolested V10 ends. And as a way to go, what a way to go! And I'm still in Strada. I'm not even in the sport mode. So we'll stick it into sport. This really is a noise from the gods. It's barking, mad, howling, shrieking, absolute craziness. Now obviously it'll be crazy of me to make comparisons between the Urus and the Technica, but I just want to point out, we keep talking about the Urus being like a sports car, but the Technica, this is the sports car. This is what you want your sports car to be: low, aggressive, loud as hell, a bit uncompromising as well. This is a car that you work with, that rewards you the harder you drive, and that makes the hair on your hand, on the back of your neck, stand on end. This is unadulterated insanity. The Technica is kind of like a greatest hits mashup of the STO and the Huracan Evo. So it has the 5.2 litre V10 in the same state of tune as the STO, 631 bhp, does 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds, top speed again in excess of 300 kilometers per hour, and it retains rear wheel drive. This is not all wheel drive. It also retains the rear wheel steering, but it has completely different suspension setup. It's a little bit more usable. The STO is a hardcore track machine. This can be used on a road, and this is a bumpy road. We came up here in the Performante, the Urus Performante, and I said that the Urus Performante, the suspension feels stiff, some places nearly taking off. The Technica, it goes over these same roads at a heightened velocity. The styling, now it's really in your face. It's got these streaks on the front bumper, sort of creates like an air curtain for the first time to aid aerodynamics. Downforce has increased. Oh man, this immediacy of the steering, the responsiveness of the front end, uncorrupted by having to send power. Oh. Wow. You move in from a super SUV, which is what the Huracan Performante is, the best super SUV that you can get your hands on, and then you get into a Technica and that feels way too big, way too cumbersome. This is so agile. Round these corners is just a roll of the wrists and you make direction changes. There's so much of immediacy. These tighter corners, a little bit twirl of the steering wheel. Obviously the rear wheel steering is coming in handy over here. It virtually shortens the wheelbase in these tighter corners, makes it more agile, virtually increases the wheelbase when you're driving it faster to give it more stability. And you notice all of this. This is pure theater. The Technica gets its own unique styling, that air vents in the front bumper that creates like an air curtain for the first time on the Huracan. It improves downforce, the weight has gone down, there is more carbon fiber, there is a nice carbon fiber wing which you can see in the rear view mirror. It looks dramatic, and in this purple shade that I'm driving with the green highlights, my god, it is loud in your face. But if I were to have a Huracan, there's no other way I would want it. I would want it to be shouty. Why would you buy a Lamborghini and want to fly under the radar? Now you're talking. There's no other way to describe the experience of driving a Technica. This is hair-raising. It's intense. As crazy as the Performante was, the Urus Performante, here it just takes it up 5 notches. The NA V10 engine, oh my god. This is the only thing that makes me sad about the imminent shift towards electrification. See, electric cars, they will be as fast. Actually, they will easily be faster than our current benchmark ICE sports cars. In terms of handling, they will also improve upon the benchmark that has been set right now, because everything is electronic. So the immediacy of it, the kind of grip that you get, the kind of metering of the torque vectoring, all of that, it will be super intelligent. But this noise, the noise that gets your juices flowing, that gets your adrenaline pumping. That noise is not going to be there. The noise, the vibrations, the sensations, that fizzing of your nerve endings, the ebb and flow as you shift every gear, bang in every gear, all that. How are electric cars ever going to match up to that? And that's why cars like these, they eventually need to go into a museum so that future generations can experience what we've experienced, what we've been lucky enough to test, to grow up on. Without all this noise, without all this drama, how are we going to get future generations lusting after cars? You need cars like the Technica to howl and scream and keep the passion going in young enthusiasts. Kids like those, they need to hear these engines scream. That's how they become future petrol heads, future car junkies. Turbo engines have come a long way. In fact, with most modern turbo engines, the high horsepower ones, you don't even talk about turbo lag. Turbo lag is non-existent. But then when you drive a naturally aspirated engine, that's when you realize the immediacy, the throttle response. Man, no turbo engine will give you anything close to that. Turbos thunder, but an NA engine, it shrieks and howls and screams. It frightens the living daylights out of you. And then you go for more revs, more noise, more speed.